Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the daily race C that was on at Brands Hatch just the other day, driving the Honda NSX for this race. This was probably one of the hardest combinations of car and track that I've come to in a while. The first time I drove this a while back, I don't remember it being so tricky, but yesterday it was a real nightmare. I was not having a good time on this track, making a lot of errors. It could have just been a bad day on the game for myself, just making a lot of silly mistakes that I shouldn't be making. As you can see there, starting from P2, quite a few fast drivers in this race again. I'm going to go to the replay cameras for the start of the race as usual. As you can see there, all the cars going through turn 1 at Brands Hatch. Everyone's got through there reasonably clean so far at the start. It looks like there's a bit of battling going into the hairpin now, just in the background there. I've managed to hold on to my P2 position. The driver in the lead there was one of the fastest cars on the top 10 leaderboards. I managed to get very close to the top 10 leaderboards with a 1 minute 14.8, although there was a few more attempts left in it, but I just couldn't hook the lap up. I just don't think yesterday was a very good day for myself. I had so many errors made on this track and car that it was really frustrating. But this race, let's just see if we can get to the end without making a mistake. As you can see there, a lot of cars extremely close together there. P3 behind me, I think it might be one of the drivers from the Nürburgring, Thomas. I think it's his new account for F4H, the esports team. I'm not sure if it is. It's possible. I'm pretty sure it is him. And you can see there in P1 we've got a Spanish driver named Senna. I've never come across him before, but he was very fast in his driving. You can see there in the distance a car nearly made a mistake there. P4 nearly lost it on the grass. So easy to do. You'll see so many drivers nearly losing control in these races at Brands Hatch in this car. An extremely hard combination. You can see there we're going to drive on board now with Thomas in P3. And he's putting a lot of pressure on myself there as I'm just trying to keep this car on the track. It was just so hard. I was doing a little bit of short shifting while I had the slipstream of P1. He looked like he was going for an aggressive approach, driving flat out, which I really didn't want to happen because it's such an easier race if you've got a fuel saving race in this car, because it's just a little bit easier to get on the power. When it's aggressive, it's quite hard to drive and keep any sort of consistency. As you can see there, I'm going to jump on board with the onboard action now with the two other replay cameras at the top of the screen as we're riding on board with myself, just trying to keep the car on the track, driving reasonably aggressive. But you can see I'm doing some short shifting into 5th gear in certain corners and trying to hold higher gears around corners just to try and not use too much fuel there. As you can see there, it's F4H Thomas, yeah, that's the name of the driver in P3. I'm pretty sure that is I've added him on my friends list. I'm pretty sure that's his new account that he's obviously joined the esports team. I'm pretty sure it is. As you can see there now, Senna in the lead, pulling away slightly and actually breaking the slipstream. You could see that his approach was to drive aggressive, get out the slipstream, and just go for it. And it's a very brave way to drive this track, because I just didn't like pushing this car around here. There was something. I don't know if I would have been best driving the Lexus for the race, doing the qualifying lap in the NSX and then practicing the race in the Lexus, because that car tends to suit myself when I want to push harder, and it's a little bit easier to drive in race conditions. So maybe next time this combination is on, I'll do my qualifying lap in this car and then move on to either the Lexus or the Nissan, I think, for the race conditions. As I think in terms of consistency, I feel like it'll be a little bit easier to push hard in the Lexus. It might not have the overall ability of the Honda at this track, but I don't think it's a massive difference. As you can see there, slightly dropping again, losing a couple of attempts a lap pretty much to P1, and holding off Thomas behind me. It's pretty much equal in terms of lap time at the moment to myself and the driver behind, although I just didn't have the ability. I think Thomas behind me had a little bit more ability to push for a faster lap, but I was just trying to keep it consistent. I really wasn't worried about putting any sort of amazing lap time in on this track, because I'd been caught out so many times in previous races in the day. I think 2 in the morning where I had a disaster and I was out all day. That's why there was no video out yesterday. I was out throughout the whole day, wasn't able to do any editing of videos, and then jumped back on in the night, had I think 3 or 4 races, and it was just a bit of a disaster. But luckily, hoping this race would be better when the final race of the day. Obviously I just wanted to stay on until I got a race where it was a reasonable result. As you can see there now, P1 starting to build that gap up, but you can see visually he's managed to break that slipstream quite a bit now, and he looks like he's approaching the 2-second lead as we're looking on the replay camera. As you can see, top 4 there, still fairly close, but it looks like that leader is really going for it. You can can see that visually the way he's driving, when you see the onboard, when you see the replay, he's really aggressive through the corners. You see myself not really pushing the limits as hard as some other drivers. You can see there again, P3 got so close to losing that rear on that curb, and you can see there a big mistake from the leader going through that real fast corner, and it looks like he nearly lost it, just about saved it and kept control, but that's give myself a chance to get very close again and get within around about 1 second behind him. And it just shows you how hard this track was. Everyone is becoming inches away from losing control on their car and making a mistake that they'll pay the price for. P1, if that was so close, a little bit harder through there, and he would have probably been in the wall and would have lost quite a big amount of time. As you can see, he's still pushing really aggressively. You can see there also in P3, Thomas looks like he's pushing aggressive. We're starting to drop P4 now. Looks like P4 is dropping back a bit and losing a bit of time, as I'm just trying to keep my times reasonably consistent. I could probably have pushed for a 1 minute 15, but I felt like if I was going to do that, I'd probably die after three laps. I just didn't feel confident in this car and combination, so my aim was just to keep it on the track for this race. I'd made so many mistakes trying to push hard in previous races. It was just pointless me doing it again and losing more drive rating. As you can see, just about holding on to P1, though he's not pulling away massively. He's got a bit of a gap, but he's not really like just pulling away by seconds every lap, and that's okay because he's pushing a lot harder than I was. You can see what he's trying to do is straight away when I got close again, he's trying to build that gap back up because he's obviously not going for any sort of fuel saving. So if he doesn't do this in this race now, as you can see there, P3 nearly again losing it on the curb. So many people nearly losing it, and as I was saying, because he had pulled away and then made that mistake, he's lost any advantage that he had from driving aggressively. And if I had been doing fuel saving, which I'd only been doing very marginal fuel saving, but if I had, he needed to push away again. That's why he's pushing so hard, because if he doesn't push it really hard, there's a chance I could jump him in the pits if I've been doing fuel saving. So clearly he wants to get back on it and push as hard as he can. But myself, just trying to keep it on the track. You can see P4 actually gained a little bit of time. It looks like he's been pushing a little bit harder, although he's still not really too close to P3. You can see there's a visual gap pretty similar to what the gap is to myself and P1, maybe a little bit more. As you can see there, P3 maintaining that gap around 7-8 tenths behind me. It was just constant around 7 tenths. It was some corners I was able to increase it on, some corners he was losing out on. It was a real close battle between myself and P3, as we're going to drive on board now with myself as P1 pushing really hard. As you can see there, going through the corner, but he's lost it again on that curb and he's into the barrier and spun out on the left hand side there. Luckily for myself, that puts me in P1, but unfortunate, that really aggressive driving has caught P1 out, as we're going to drive on board now with P3 as I go a little bit deep into that corner as the braking marker had disappeared again. That catches me out nearly every time that goes when it disappears, because I'm not prepared for it. If I knew it was, once I know it's missing, I know to brake early, but now P3 runs wide onto the grass, and luckily he did that really sensible. He got off the power and avoided spinning out, because normally if you do that you end up spinning out and lose control. But luckily for myself now, I've got a little bit of a cushion. I've got P2 now, who's the driver who was in P4, who's around 2 seconds behind me, and I was able to I felt confident to be able to keep that gap pretty much around that distance. As you can see there, looking at the replay camera, you can see he's not anywhere near to be in my slipstream. He's around 2 seconds behind, so I've just got to concentrate on not making a mistake now. This was a really hard task for me because I had made so many errors in this track and car combination. I really don't understand why, because the first time I ever drove this car at this track, I did make errors obviously, but I felt more consistent. I don't know whether they've changed something on the patch with this car, with the handling or something, but I just felt like it was wanting to bite out every time, especially through that right hander. I did start understanding how to do that corner a bit better, braking a bit later and just avoid hitting the curb too hard, because I think I was trying to do it like a qualifying lap where, if you make a mistake in a hot lap time trial, it's no issue, you can just restart, start again. Whereas in these races you can't do that. You've got to be a bit more gentle on the curbs, because if it does bite, it will spin you out. This car, as you can see there, around 2 seconds a lead to P2. It's sometimes, I think it's actually might have dropped back a little bit more there. You can see it looks like he's possibly made an error somewhere, so unless it actually, no, what's happened there, he's pitted on lap 7. I can see now there he's pitted on lap 7. I've now got Thomas behind me, who's around 4.5 seconds. So I remember now at this point I did notice him do that, and I was just praying that he wouldn't get the undercut, because with the tyres, I think they were on times 10 tyre wear for this race. So if you do the undercut, it's a really aggressive approach, because on your outlap you can be really fast, probably about half a second at least faster than the drivers that haven't changed their tyres, probably maybe half a second or more. And the chance of, I just tried to keep this lap without making any mistakes, keep it on the track, get in the pits, and hopefully he might not have done as much fuel saving as what I had done on them opening few laps, where I was able to do a bit of short shifting. So we're going to see now as we approach these final few corners on my in lap before I pit. You can see I've got enough fuel to pretty much drive reasonably aggressive. I'm not going to run out of fuel. We've got P2 and 3. It looks like there's been a change of position again. It looks like Thomas has made another mistake on this lap that we're on now. As you can see, they're straight in the pits. Going to put some new tyres on and obviously fill up the car, and I was going to go pretty much around the diamond, as you can see, working on the car, putting the fuel in now, and it's going to be pretty close to P2, as you can see there now. So we're just filling up that fuel, and I'm going to go slightly over the diamond there, but that was only because I wanted to counteract the first few laps where I'd done a bit of short shifting when in the slipstream. So I wanted to just make sure I got enough fuel, because I was 2 seconds ahead before I went in the pits, and as you can see there, I've come out in front around 2 seconds ahead still. So the undercut has not worked out for P2. Maybe he had maybe he hadn't been doing any fuel saving before the pits and been driving really aggressive and revving the engine out, and had used more fuel than what he would have liked. So it's not really worked out for him, because when we went in the pits we were like 2 seconds ahead, and we're now 1.9, 1.8 seconds. So I would rather be in the situation now where I've got the fuel to run to the end. I've also got the fresher tyre. One lap on this is like 10 laps with the times 10 tyre wear on. So it's all looking good at the moment, and all I've got to do now is hold this position and keep the car on the track. You're going to see me being quite respectful to the curbs, and trying to just not really attack these, especially that left one there. I was trying to avoid getting too far over on that left hand side, because that's the curb that you will spin out on. As you can see there, not pushing too close to the grass, just trying to keep it reasonably, driving fast but not driving too aggressive. That I'm not pushing for them 3 or 4 attempts that I could be going for if I had to go for it. I'm just trying to keep the car on the track. You can see, not risking going out wide on the left hand side there. That's another corner that will catch you out on that final corner if you push too hard and you just roll out onto the grass slightly, and it will just spin you around. I think it was at Brands Hatch when you saw GTB Twizzy do that. He lost control by just putting the rear left hand tyre on the grass, and it's just an easy mistake to make. So I didn't want to risk starting this race. Just trying to keep it cool and just trying to stay on the track, especially after the disasters I've been having. You can see there, pushed quite hard around there. That was another corner that was catching me out. Possibly the brake balance was causing an issue there. Maybe I should have put a bit more rear bias on for that corner, just to turn the rotation of the car around, as it seemed to be on the steering a bit on that corner. Now working our way down this straight into the really fast right hand corner, and again we're actually on a reasonably good lap at this point. It's not, I wasn't really trying to go for a fast lap, I was just trying to keep it consistent, but it looks like consistency was actually paying off on this lap. Obviously the benefit on this lap is we've got lower fuel and fresh tyres now, so I was probably getting a bit of the benefit of the extra grip off the tyres as I go through that sector. Pretty much identical to my previous best lap of a 1 minute 16.3, but like I say, I think I had potential to get into a late 15.9 or 8 or something like that, but I just did not want to risk getting that. I wasn't willing to push too hard, so I was staying over to the right hand side for this lap. I could see it was going to be an okay lap, and we go over on a 1 minute 16.2, so not an amazing lap, but it's not the worst lap. So reasonably happy at this stage, maintaining that 2 second lead to P2. That was the most important thing, trying to make sure that he doesn't get any closer than 2 seconds behind. You can see there P4, Thomas looks like he's had a few errors in the race, but he's obviously pushing fairly hard. You can see the fastest lap of the race done by Senna, the Spanish driver that made the mistake, who was in front of me at 1 minute 15.8. So obviously that is around the 1 minute 15.6 to 8. Looks like it is like a good lap in race condition, but I felt like for me to do that it would be risking too much, so there just really was no need to push that hard, especially when you've got a 2 second lead and the guy behind me isn't really making any impression on myself. He's actually losing out a bit now. This is where he's going to start dropping off a tenth or so every lap, because his tyres are starting to get worn out. Obviously he's done that extra lap, so every lap I've got a fresh 1 lap fresher tyre, so I've got that little bit of extra grip every lap, and even though I'm not pushing really hard, I'm able to just extend that lead by a few tenths every single lap. As you can see there, giving no chance of running to the left hand side on that corner again, giving plenty of space on the left hand side, really not risking anything there. You can see lap time only 1 minute 16.7, not risking any mistakes. There's just no need to do it. I didn't really feel the need to push that hard and risk spinning this car, especially at this stage. It was getting really nervous for myself at this stage because I'd had so many bad races, you know, coming up to the last 3 or 4 laps now, and I just wanted to keep this car on the track and not spin it or make a daft mistake that I've been making in the other races. You can see there staying nice and tight to the apex, being very cautious on the power. That's one of the issues with this car for myself, is just putting the power down feels really nervous for me with this car. I don't know if some people use counter steer assist still. I know a lot of people are still using it, and it does help. That's where it helps out with the confidence in putting the power down coming out of corners. I just don't have the confidence with this car as much as with the Lexus. I feel like it doesn't have the same effect as you know, counter steer assist. You probably can still use it and have an advantage. I just feel that with the Lexus, without it on, like the way I drive without counter steer on, it's not as much of a disadvantage because there's a lot of, it feels like it's got more rear end grip, the Lexus. So maybe I should go through to that, drive that car next time at this track. Qualifying this car obviously because this car has probably the more potential in terms of overall lap time, but then getting that Lexus for the race conditions and just try and keep consistent faster laps. As you can see there now, I've pulled that gap out again to P2, so the tyres being in that better condition are really paying off. I'm able to just keep my lap times consistent, another 1 minute 16.6, so 16.3, 16.2, 16.7, 16.6. I'm reasonably happy with that. I obviously could be pushing harder, but like I say, you can see how much respect I'm giving to the corners. I'm not putting too much power down the exits. I don't want to lose traction on the rear end just by a silly mistake like coming out that corner. If you put it down too hard, you can start losing the rear end. It's just not worth it. As you can see there, it looks like Senna is now in P3 and pushing really hard. He obviously wants to get past P2 and get himself onto, you know, a chance of pushing myself. Although at this stage of the race, I think I'm now got 3 laps to go after this, 2 laps to go after this, sorry, and I'm now over 3 seconds ahead of P2. As you can see there, this is now the battle for P2 as we're going to drive on board with P2, looking back at Senna, who's pushing really hard. He was just driving this track so aggressive, maybe a little bit too aggressive, and it was going to hurt him. As you can see there, getting really close. That's what I was saying about how close you have to get to that side if you're really pushing. He's going to have a little look down the left hand side, but there's not really much you can do there, and he actually turns in. I'm not sure if that was more P2's fault, but it looked like it was just defensive driving, and then he got a little bit upset by the looks of it. That looked a little bit deliberate to me, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure of that, but he's driving really aggressively and just giving himself penalties. Really, he should have just cooled down, took his time, because he's clearly got the pace to get past this driver in P2. He had much better race pace, but again, he's got really aggressively into that corner, and again, he looks like he gives him another tap, and then again he nearly loses control because he's being so aggressive on that throttle, and now he's flashing P2. He's obviously really wound up with himself. I don't know if he's flashing to say sorry or whether he's annoyed, but he just needed to calm down and just take his time in this situation. And again, running out onto the grass there, and again on the entry nearly on the grass, he's just driving too, and then again pretty predictable, goes onto the dirt, spins it, and he's made a mistake. He really was just getting a bit impatient there. I think he needed to take his time and line a move up. I think if he would have just lined his move up coming out of this corner, got really close coming out of this corner, and got in the slipstream, he would have been able to make a move either on the left or the right, or even held off and stayed as close as he could through turn 1 and made a move on the inside into the hairpin. That's normally the position that you can make a move, especially with the race pace he had. He had much better pace than the guy who was in P2. I just feel that he was getting a bit impatient. You know, he still had 2 laps to do it there. You know, he just needed to take his time a bit more, and I think he would have got that P2 back. I don't think he would have been able to catch myself. You can see I was over 5 seconds ahead at the point, so it was all for P2, and he really should have just been a bit more patient with that and just took his time. I mean, whether there was previous throughout the lap, I don't know. You know, there could have been other stuff that had gone on, but it looked like he was getting a little bit too aggressive, and just should have cooled down a bit and took his time. As you can see there now, myself on the final lap, and I'm still very nervous at this point because I did not want to make any sort of error, just trying to keep it on the track, being so respectful for the corners. You can see not pushing the limits anywhere. I'm just trying to keep it 100% away from any risk going into this another real tricky corner. You can see their driver in front of me made an error. I was praying at that point that that car would not on ghost, and swipe me out of the race. But the way my races have been going, I was I was expecting it to happen. As you can see there now, it looks like Thomas has actually got himself into P2 and made a move on P3, caught him up somewhere. It looks like the driver who was in P2 must have made a mistake, as I'm going to go over the line and get a victory. So not the best final lap. You can see I was nearly a second off my pace in the final lap, where I was just being so cautious, but really happy to finally get a win at this track. I think it was my 5th race or 6th race, and I was really getting annoyed, and finally the last race of the night, I think it was like 1 in the morning, something like that, managed to get myself a win and the race to upload. So thankfully it happened, and just a few things to take from that race was just to drive. It's really, next time I come to this track, I'm not going to worry about pushing too hard. If I don't get the win, I'm not going to be worried. I'm just going to be trying to keep the car on the track, because it seems like the best way to do it. A lot of people making so many errors at this track, and combination consistency definitely pays off with that car at that track. Anyway, thanks again for everyone who's watched the video, and if you did enjoy it, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, and also if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you click the notification button so you don't miss any future uploads. I do try to upload every single day. I know I missed yesterday, but again, I'll be back into the daily routine of uploading. Thanks again for watching, everyone.